This is Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder? Hey, welcome to Can I Laugh on Your Shoulder? I'm Molly Stillman, and this is a podcast where I sit down with a different guest each week and have raw, funny, often brutally honest conversations about the things that matter most: faith, business, life, and everything in between, where we each learn how to be good stewards of the things we've been entrusted with, even our stories, and how we can use those things to serve others and leave our families, our friendships, and our communities a little better than we found them. I want to create a space where people are unafraid to be themselves and unafraid to ask the questions the rest of us are thinking. My goal is to make you laugh, cry, and laugh till you cry. Buckle up, everyone. My guest this week is the incredible Ginny Yurich. She is a homeschooling mother of 5 and the founder of 1,000 Hours Outside, a global movement designed to reclaim childhood. Along with her husband, Josh, Ginny is a full-time creator and curator of the 1,000 Hours Outside lifestyle brand, which includes a robust online store, an app, books, the whole 9 yards. She also hosts the top-rated 1,000 Hours Outside weekly podcast, and she is a thought leader in the world of nature-based play and its benefits for kids. Ginny lives with her family in the Ann Arbor area of Michigan. Okay, let me tell you something real quick. Whether you have kids or not, you are going to love this episode. I realize that I say every week that I am excited for this episode and that I admit that, okay? I fully embrace that, but I am always excited for the episode. However, this is not something I say every week. And when I say that this is probably going to go in my top 10 favorite episodes of all time. Now, remember, we're here in the late 300s, all right? So I've been doing this a while. When I say that this is probably going to be one of my top 10 favorite episodes of all time, I'm not kidding. And I think part of it is because we had such a rich conversation around things that I think are honestly going to challenge us, convict us. I was real convicted in a good way after this episode. But what I think it's doing is, even though, like I said, if you don't have kids, I still want you to listen to this episode because there is something in it for us. And I think that there is something in it for us adults who have found ourselves in the last few years, the last few decades. We're clinging to our desks. We're at our desks all day long. We're never outside anymore. And there's something to that. There really is something to that. And Ginny and I talk a lot about that. We unpack it. Oh man, this is such a good episode. I also don't really listen back to my episodes very much because, you know, I lived it. And I am for sure going to be listening back to this episode. So without further ado, I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to get on my chat with Ginny Yurich. Okay, I know today is going to be a lot of fun because we have already just been yammering away. And I told her when we first got on to, you know, the Zoom that I was just so excited about this because I have been following Ginny's work for quite a while. So Ginny, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Molly, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited. Okay, so for those that don't know you, we're just going to dive right in because I love you and I want everyone else to love you too if they don't already. I'm sure they do because you have like a million bajillion people in your, like literally, that's the exact number. Yes. It's not an exaggeration. It's a million bajillion. People in your, in your sphere, on Instagram and in your community, 1,000 Hours Outside. So introduce yourself, give us the Ginny 101. So who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Isn't this such a overarching question?
Yeah.
Like I would just be like, hey, I'm a mom. I'm behind on laundry and I don't know what we're cooking for dinner. So that's like, that's like how you feel about yourself, right?
Okay. Here's the thing is I've done like 300 and I don't even know. This will be like 300.
A million bajillion interviews.
A million bajillion, exact number. Many. I've asked that same question. It's just like, it's a question I've asked at the start of every interview I've done for 20 years. And it's just kind of like my thing. I don't know where it came from. In any event, I've never had anybody answer it honestly like that. And I love it. So I think that might be the best answer ever is, hi, I'm a mom. I am behind on laundry and I don't know what I'm cooking for dinner.
Slightly overweight. don't know.
I love you
that
so
is
much.
how I view myself. I think, it's just this bizarre thing. I started in 2011. My life changed.
Yeah.
And I started writing about it in 2013. And that's how I ended up here, in a series of very, very, very small steps. But in 2011, we had 3 kids under 3. Didn't matter, though, that we had 3 kids. When I had 1 kid, I just about lost it. I couldn't do it. I was so bad at being a mom. But the problem is I thought I was going to be so good. I had all these plans. I was like, I'm going to be amazing at this. We are going to do a schedule. And every 2 hours, we're going to have a different activity, like 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I mean, the whole thing. I had the whole thing planned out. And then our oldest came and I was like, this is a flop. He's just crying all the time. He's nursing all the time. He's never sleeping. And I was like, what have we done?
The best parents are the parents who don't have children.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and I was one of those in my life. So they love to give you advice. They're really good at that. Yeah. But I really struggled, and I didn't love that, Molly, because I was excited to be a mom. I'd been looking forward to being a mom. I'd always wanted to be a mom. I like kids, and then it just was this big old smack in the face that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting to be pretty good at it. I was decently good at other things in my life. And so what happened is that every single day I was miserable and I was depressed and down. And it wasn't baby blues. It was I can't believe this is my life and these days are so long. And, how am I going to survive? My husband had a normal job. It was an hour commute. So that's a 10.5-hour day with a baby. That's a really long time. And so we ended up having a couple in a row, just I'm not sure why. And all of a sudden, I'm just dragging these 3 kids to program after program. And and I would be okay, I'm going to try and get 3 kids to the library at 10 a.m. And it's well, everyone's got different clothes and everyone has different size diapers and they're all nursing and they're all crying and they all eat different types of food. And I have to get them all in a car seat and I have to buckle everyone and they all hate the car. So then they start screaming. And then you get to the library and you have to open the door and you have to get everybody out in the stroller and the books and the diaper bag. And they don't want to be at the library anyway. So they're crying during the program and you're trying to get them to stop and they're fighting over the toys. And I'm what is this? This is what American moms do. And then you do it all in reverse, right? And then you get home and it's 11 a.m. I'm I still have 8 hours. I haven't even done lunch. It's hard. It's so hard. And you've also given up your life, in many ways, it's a good give up, but you have given up maybe your career aspirations or you're this is what I'm doing. I just felt like a failure is really what it was. Every day, all day through the night. And I was really struggling as a person. I tell people I wouldn't even drink water because I would think, heaven forbid that I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
What would I do? What do I do with these 3 kids?
Yes.
Well, I had to do I hold them in my lap? To this day, I don't know.
Yeah.
What do people do? I'm so I wouldn't. So anyway, so I'm kind of doing this miserable existence. I love my kids, but just really struggling at being a mom. And we had family that was willing to help. It wasn't even that. Just the kids were super clingy. I'm why do they like me so much? I don't know. Goodness. So this is the life we're living. And then I had a friend at MOPS, because that was another program that we did, Moms of Preschoolers, where they just changed their name. And I don't know what the new name is, but I still call it MOPS. And she came to MOPS one day and she said, hey, Charlotte Mason says that kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours a day whenever the weather is tolerable. And I was like, come on, that's ridiculous. Who does that? First of all, who has 4 to 6 hours a day? And second of all, what are the kids going to do for 4 to 6 hours? I'm they won't even play with my homemade Play-Doh. It's 12 minutes and then it's over. Nothing lasts for 4 to 6 hours. So I'm thinking in my mind that this is ridiculous. And then she's like, well, do you want to try it? And I was like, no, I do not want to try that. I was have you been to the library program? This will be 6 times longer. No. But when you're a young mom, Molly, it's you're desperate for friends too. This is a whole other piece of it. It's you've got kids and you can't even finish a conversation and you're desperate for friendships. So I agreed to go with his one friend in September of 2011. So it's been 12 years. To a park from 9 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. And it was a park with grass. I mean, it was not like there was no play structure, this grass, a little creek that ran through. Yeah. And there was a creek that ran through. So that was whatever. But she's like, okay, well, bring your picnic lunch and your blanket. And I was like, but what else? Should I bring my water table? I probably should bring my books and some crafts.
Table.
I was like, oh, yeah. And she's like, no, you just bring your lunch. I was like, oh, this is not going to go good. Like, these kids, what are they going to do? But I tell people, Molly, that it was the best day of my life because it was the first good day I had as a mom. And our oldest was 3 years old. I had not had a good day yet. And then I had a good day. And what happened was that the kids just played. And I did not know that they could do that. So we spread out our picnic blankets. It's fall in Michigan, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful day. It's the sun and the leaves. And I just sat on this picnic blanket with my baby. And my friend had a baby. And they nursed and slept and sat on the blanket and played in the grass. And they just stayed nearby. And the older kids, which she had 2 older ones and I had 2 older ones, they were like, 2 to 4, 1 to 4. They just ran around and they would come and get food and then they would go run around. And I don't even know what they were doing, but I got to have a conversation. I got to kind of catch my breath. It was the first time that I got to just like exhale. And it really changed my life. And so we kind of immediately changed how we were doing early childhood. We had this small group of friends, 4 families, 5 families that were willing to use their time that way. And we would pick the most tolerable weather days, 2 or 3 a week, and we would rotate through parks and we would try and meet up for 4 to 6 hours to just bring food. And I did it really just for myself at the beginning because it changed my whole motherhood experience. And I felt like, well, if I'm a more present mom, then this is going to be a better situation for my family. But I noticed so quickly that our kids were thriving. It was like all of a sudden, they're eating better, sleeping better, they're getting along better, they're not getting sick. We actually haven't needed a doctor's appointment since that day in 2011. We have 5 kids. So our kids are ages 15 to 7 now, but then they were 3, 1 and a baby. And what I started to learn is that when we take our kids outside, especially for extended periods of time, and we don't have to do anything. Like, you don't have to plan a scavenger hunt and these games, and you don't really have to be involved in some ways, it's better if you're not. If you just go to a place that's safe, right? They're not going to run into the road and whatever, they've got some space to roam, that this helps them in every facet of their development. It helps their cognition. So it's helping them academically. It helps their physical bodies in so many ways beyond just regular movement. It helps their emotional state, ours too. It helps their social skills tremendously. And then for people that are interested, and I know not everybody is interested, but it helps them spiritually too, because God's creation is a display of spiritual laws. So you just get so much for going out there. And so I don't know, that's where it started. A couple years later, I realized that we were not ever running into other kids. I added up how much time we were spending outside because I had read in a Dr. Scott Sampson book called How to Raise a Wild Child that the average American child was outside for 4 to 7 minutes, but on screens for 4 to 7 hours, and that they were on screens about 1,200 hours a year. And when I added up our time, it was about equivalent to that. And I just thought, not that we're against screens, but I thought, if all that time, all those memories, all that relationship building, all of that connection, all of those moments of exhale, if those had gone to screens, our life would be so much less full. And so I thought, I'm going to write about it. This is about bringing balance back to childhood. It's based off of those numbers, matching virtual life with real life. Can we at least shoot for matching it? And it comes from that Charlotte Mason, who turns out was from the 1800s. I didn't learn that till like years later, or I probably would have never paid attention. And then Angela Hanscom is a pediatric occupational therapist who has a book that's phenomenal called Balanced and Barefoot, which is about the power of simple outdoor play. And she says that kids of all ages ideally would get 3 hours minimum of outdoor play every single day, including the teens. And so this is what we're doing. This is just like part of our life that for the last decade that we've been writing about it, I've kept track And we are aiming to be outside every year for 1,000 hours. Sometimes we haven't gotten there. We've gotten close, and sometimes we've gotten over. But it is the answer to a lot of modern day parenting problems. And it has given us a really full life. And it still works. It's one of those parenting things that works for a toddler as well as it works for a teenager. So that's where we're at.
Oh,
and
my
here
gosh.
I am now.
Oh my gosh,
you.
I love it. I love it. And then when this airs, your book will be out, or your book will be out, and it's called Until the Streetlights Come On: How a Return to Play Brightens Our Present and Prepares Kids for an Uncertain Future. And I love it so much. So I came across, and I don't honestly remember who shared your account with me. It was a few years ago. It was during, I want to say it was like right at the peak of the pandemic or sometime early on, where somebody had shared your account. And I just was like, I love this. And this was, really in a shift for us too, because my kids were at the time of when the pandemic hit, my daughter was in kindergarten, my son was in preschool. And,
wow.
And we were living in a cul-de-sac. And so, we did the whole, like, our neighbors were a part of our bubble. I was just like looking back on this. I want to like punch myself in the face. But just, so that's like who we saw, but they had two like, preschool aged kids. Actually, it was a baby and a toddler, really. But we lived in a little, like, not even a quarter of an acre lot in a cul-de-sac in a, cookie cutter neighborhood. And, my husband and I had always dreamed of living on and owning a farm. But that really, I think the honest truth is, we had been saving for land and we'd been kind of dreaming of and praying of moving to a farm. But it was always kind of, a decade down the road. And then we'd been married for a decade, and it was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should think about this. And, but the reality is the pandemic accelerated it in that we were just inside. We were inside constantly, and everybody was inside. And yes, like we'd go in the front yard, but it was like our little front yard and our backyard, because like the parks were closed. I mean, we couldn't go anywhere. I mean, now that I look back, I'm like, really? We closed the parks? Like, really, folks, you can get COVID from swinging? Like, can we all just admit that this was stupid?
Ridiculous.
Like, really ridiculous.
In Michigan, our governor closed the river. Literally closed the river, because there's this really cool place near us where you can tube down this river or take a little kayak or whatever. And there's these like 9 little man-made, like the Army Corps of Engineers made these little drops in the water.
Yeah.
So it's like a little water. It's like very little, but like this little drop, and you like ride it down, then you keep going down the river. And she closed that.
Yeah.
I was like, come on.
Looking back now, I'm just like, come on. Can we all admit that this was stupid? It was just so dumb.
Yeah, so dumb. And my mom, she's like, I don't even remember it. I was like,
I remember.
Well, I do.
Oh yeah, we couldn't go to a park. Like they had literally like caution tape taped around the parks near us. Like they were just like, no. So in any event, like, we got to a point where it was like our tiny little backyard was like, we could only do so much. And so in any event, we accelerated our move, and we understand that is like a unique situation, and we had the privilege and the financial resources because we'd been saving for a long time to be able to move. But so we moved to the farm, and in a lot of ways at first I had these dreams and these visions of what it was going to be like. This is me just being real transparent and vulnerable. I was like, we found this place and it has 12.5 acres and there's a creek running through it and there's woods and there's walking trails and like all this space and we're going to have animals and there's barns and places for our kids to explore and blah, 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 blah. And we moved here and it was the same thing. It was like it was the same thing we were experiencing at our last house in a cul-de-sac, where the kids just wanted to be inside and they just wanted to watch a show and they just wanted to be on their iPad or whatever. And I just was like, no, you have 12.5 acres, like go outside. And then they would go outside for 10 minutes and they'd be like, I'm bored. It just, and I just was like, how is this my life? Like, how is this happening? I don't understand why they won't just go outside. Like when I was a kid, You know what I did? It was until the streetlights came on. I went outside and I drank from a water hose where the water was boiling lava hot at first and then tasted like rust after that. And so, you know what I mean? Like, and I made stupid shows and I played hopscotch and I, carved my name in fresh cement and all those random things. And like, I remember across the street, cause I lived in a neighborhood, and I remember there was like a little, like right across the street from my house, there was like an apartment complex, but then in the lawn, like common area of the apartment complex was the foundation of an old home that had been burned down. And they never cleaned up the foundation. So it was just like essentially like
playground.
Right. But it was just a slab. But the cool thing about it was like, you could see like which floor was like the bathroom and which floor was the kitchen and which floor. Cause it was like it was like you had just cut a house off from the foundation up. And so we used to go and play on this slab and pretend it was a real house for hours. And I look back, I'm like, there was nothing there except for like, I could tell that this was bathroom tile. You know what I mean?
Wow.
In any event. And so like, I would play on that for hours. And I just think about like what happened, what changed from my childhood to my kids' childhood. And the reality is like, streaming and Netflix and Disney Plus and iPads and Kindles and things like that. I mean, that didn't exist when we were kids. And so I was frustrated, and I was thinking of myself as a bad parent. And I was like, how am I, how did I get here? I'm somebody who really values unstructured play, and I value like a little bit of unconventional parenting. I mean, there's a whole reason that's why we moved to a farm, like to be a little bit unconventional, and to can food and bake our own bread and raise, harvest our own meat chickens and turkeys. And it's a weird life, and I understand that. But yet my kids still just wanted to watch Bluey. And I was like, what is going on? I don't understand. Anyway, so that's how I came across your work. And so I think it was 2 years ago, we started the 1,000 Hours Outside Challenge. And also in full transparency, I was real bad at logging my time. That's a thing I've got to get better at. It's the actual logging of the time. But what it did was it got us more conscious about. That was the thing, it was this intentional move to being outside more and getting the kids involved. And we have had moments and literal seasons since we started where we've done really well. And then we've had other times where we have not. And so there's a section in your book, or a paragraph in your book I wanted to read, because I want to, I think that this speaks to the parent listening who is like, this overwhelms me. I can't imagine being outside with my kids for 4 to 6 hours a day. Like I can 100% picture the person that is listening right now, or just thinks like, oh, I have failed at this, or I have, I've done way too much screen time or whatever. So I can picture any of those people. So anyway, it's in, I don't even remember what chapter this is. What chapter is it? I think it is chapter 4 in Bored to Tears. Uncover the gifts that boredom gives. And it says, we don't need an overhaul in the ways we are parenting. We just need slight adjustments. Bring fewer toys, schedule screen-free time, have a jar of popsicle sticks labeled with hands-on idea. Boredom is a scary proposition because we are already at our wits' end. We are splintered off from family and from community and bear the brunt of burdens that were meant to be shouldered by many others. The joys were meant to be dispersed as well. A society in which children are sequestered misses out on daily sparks of joy, curiosity, and youthful energy. So I love that so much, because I love the way you said, we don't need an overhaul. It's about micro changes. And you kind of alluded to that a little bit too, about like how you got here was from just a series of little changes and little decisions along the way. So can you unpack that for me? Because, and for the person, especially, like, speak specifically to the person listening who is like, I can't do this. I can't do this.
Maybe they've already turned it off.
Like they're just like,
but I'm God. I don't even know.
Yeah.
We hope they're still here, but they may not be. You said some interesting things. First of all, you said you moved and that didn't solve it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a big misconception, is that the answer is not where you live. Because some people live in apartments in the city, and some people live in subdivisions, and some people live in the country. And with each of those places, the access to the outdoors looks different. And there are pros and cons. So I've got a brother that lives in Brooklyn, New York, and you can walk to all sorts of playgrounds from his house, but you can't let your kid go run wild, right? Especially a little one. And if you live in a suburb, there's neighbors.
Right.
And there's other kids, right? Like in your homeschool pod, your bubble, whatever you're doing at home or whatever that is, just in your neighborhood. And if you live in the country, you've got space to roam, but there aren't other kids to engage your kids. And so the answer is not that. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, this is different. Things have changed. And what's changed is that society used to be structured, maybe unknowingly, in a way that preserved childhood. So the shows ended. And I have distinct memories of the shows ending and being annoyed that the shows ended at noon on Saturday morning, or on Sunday there was nothing for kids to watch. I mean, there was a whole period of time we didn't have cable. So there was nothing. It was like WWF. I'm like, I don't like this. I'm trying to like this, but I just don't.
Yeah.
And so you're just screwed. And as a kid, you are forced then to go find something to do. And I think that when you've done that a lot of times throughout childhood, you learn that you have so much fun in the foundation slab, making things up, right? But a lot of kids today have not had those experiences because they haven't ever been forced to, for a long period of time, dive into play. So we are in a tricky spot because what's happened is the onus for this falls on the shoulders of the parents.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really big change. And that's why it's so hard, is because there's not kids running around in the neighborhood. And Mike Lanza wrote a book called Playborhood, where he talks about how there's nothing out there to entice the kids. Like, even if you have a cool play set, and even if you have, the trampoline or the latest whatever, the thing that entices kids is other kids, and they're not outside. And so we're really in a spot that is very hard. It's very, very hard. And so what I say to parents is that this is worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth your awareness. It's worth your awareness because it enhances your life too. And I used to be annoyed that, I think I'm in a roundabout way getting to your question. I used to be annoyed that when I was a kid, we had a neighbor that literally locked her kids outside. Like, she had 4 kids and the door was locked all summer. I don't even know how they ate. I'm not quite sure. And I don't even know what she did. Like, what is she doing in there? But they were locked out and they roamed the neighborhood and everyone had a lot of fun. And when I became a mom, I was like, I want that.
Yeah.
I want to be able to lock them out. I don't know. What am I thinking? That's kind of awful. But I was like, well, I'm sure she got so much done. Like, she's probably able to cook and clean. And she's catching her breath that way. The kids are out roaming. And I was kind of jealous of it. And then as time went on, I realized, look, I am stuck in this vortex of technology too. Like, I have a cell phone and I am on podcasts and I am reading blogs and I am on the internet and I am also stuck in it. And I also need this balance for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've learned over the past decade is that this is a step that you take as a family. And the step is awareness. It's about knowing that when we play outside, it benefits every single member of your family, from your newborn to your grandmother to your great grandmother. It helps you. It helps everyone with their eyesight, with their mood, with their internal bodily functions. It all is reset by the sun's clock. There is so much going on out there, and it is to be celebrated if you can weave some of that into your life.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 1,000 hours. Maybe it's 200, maybe it's 500. But the point is being intentional about it, knowing that it is extremely beneficial for you and your children, and then celebrating it, because this is very hard. This is very, very hard. You're the one who has to now put the constraints. You're the one who has to have those boundaries up for your kids. But I will say that it is absolutely worth it. And I tell people that this is a challenge that even if you fail, you win. There's no losing here. Like, you don't ever lose. You don't ever lose. If you spend 600 hours outside with your family in a year, you don't lose. There's actually nothing you don't ever lose, because all of that is enhancing your life. And I talked recently to a young man named Sean Killingsworth, who is 20. And he has grown up in this sort of tech guinea pig age. And he had a really sobering conversation with me about how he lost his childhood. And he had a mom that didn't let him get the Game Boy. He had a mom that was pretty on top of things, but culturally, he said, there's nobody else to play with. And when I go to school, everyone is on their phone. And when you walk into the lunchroom, it's quiet. And when classes end, you finish your high school math class and everybody stands up at the end where usually there's chatter and people are talking and they're going into the halls and, seeing their friends for a few minutes. He said it's silent. Everyone just picks up their phones. He calls it a social wasteland. And he was so grieved. He was so grieved about the childhood that he lost. And so it really matters. It really matters. It does so much both for our kids, but as a society at large, when we let our kids play, because that provides the other kids that entice everybody else out. So there are very layered things that are going on. So if you're listening and you're like, look, no way, I can't do 4 to 6 hours, but maybe you could do this. Maybe when you pick your kids up from school, you could bring a snack and you could hang out at the playground for an hour before you go home. You could have your dinner done and you could do that. Maybe on the weekend, you could go for a 2-mile hike or half-mile hike or something like that and let your kids lead, because when they lead, then they find things that are interesting and it takes a while. Sometimes a 2-hour hike is like only a mile because you've stopped and you're talking and you see the birds and you want to see more. Maybe you do that on the weekend and you slot it in. And what happens is, I think, you find the wonder of it. That's what happened for me. I was like, this isn't going to work. This is a really awful use of my time. I don't think I should be doing this. It's going to crash and burn. But then I found in just one time that there was a lot of value in it. And the boredom piece is big because we don't really have the energy for whining kids. It's hard. I don't want to hear my kids. I'm bored. But Angela Hanscom, in that book I talked about previously, Balanced and Barefoot, she says it can take kids up to 45 minutes to develop their play scheme. How are they going to play, right? They got to figure it out. What are we going to do? Who's going to be what? And you kind of have to give that time. So we just have little statements that we say that are not emotionally charged. Like we'll say, it's okay to be bored. And over and over again, and then they get bored of you saying that, so they go find something to do. I just say, I trust you'll find something to do. Boredom's normal. That's fine. You'll figure it out. And you just kind of are like a repeating loop, and they just eventually do that. But
that was going to be my question is like, okay, so when the kids get when you come with you get the whiny kid who's like, I'm bored. There's nothing to do. Like what? Because I mean,
that is what I do. But I do think there is a piece of this that, if it's at all possible, you include your friends. Because I tell people, they're like, what do we need to go outside? I'm like, you don't need much, right? Like you need maybe proper clothing, but beyond that, you need food because that helps. Take some good food, take special snacks, whatever. You need food, you need a first aid kit because kids fall, you're going to have to put a Band-Aid on. And you need a friend. That's really what changes the whole thing.
Food,
it changes it
the
for
3
you.
F's. Food, first aid, friends. Love it.
Yeah, that's what I got to offer you. That's it. But it makes a huge difference. It's more safe. Obviously, there's extra eyes, but it gives you someone to have a relationship with, and it gives your kids other kids to bounce ideas off of. And even if it's multi-age, they do not have to be the same age. Dr. Peter Gray wrote Free to Learn, and he is a huge proponent for multi-age play as a means of self-education, that kids learn so much when they're with kids of other ages. So it doesn't have to be someone that's in your exact same stage of life at all. It can be anyone that would value a couple hours outside. Go together. And it will really change, because then you're accountable too, right? Like they're showing up, you're showing up, and, take your meals outside, take your games outside, take your schoolwork outside. Anytime you go outside, your eyes relax. Inside, and when you're sleeping, your eyes are always constricted. There's a ring around your eye called the ciliary ring. It's always tensed up. Like if you were to lift, a weight with your bicep, it's always tense, the ciliary ring. When you're inside and you have a short field of vision, the only time it relaxes is when you have distance looking. That's what Katie Bowman calls it. She's got nutritious movement. Distance looking. And then it relaxes. And so kids are really struggling with short-sightedness. Myopia is on the rise. So if you know that just going out, take your book out there. Take your card games, whatever it is. It does not have to be like we're climbing the mountain, we're hiking to the waterfall. It does not have to be that. It's a little walk around your neighborhood is really a good use of your time.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So the other question that is like hanging in the balance is, I know that you live in Michigan. And as we were discussing before we started recording, you woke up this morning with snow on the ground. And when we are recording this on November 1st. And, when this airs, it will be the middle of December. And so unless you live in Florida or, you have an unseasonably warm, climate or whatever, some people listening live where it's real hard to go outside. Or, on the flip side, in the summertime, like there are days mid-July in North Carolina where I'm like, absolutely not. I need, I really need air conditioning very badly. So what do you do, especially you Michigander, during the winter time? Like if somebody's listening, they're like, well, I want to implement this, but I live in Nova Scotia. And so this is going to be really hard right now in mid-December. Or, even me, I can be kind of a pansy in the middle of the winter if it's freezing outside or real windy. So give me some practical tips for what you do when the weather is not cooperating.
All right. So there's a really good book that changed my view because I used to wish away winter. Even when we were doing all this outside time, I'm wishing away winter. But then I read Linda McGurk's got a book called There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, which is not true. I mean, I do not think that's true at all, but It's like tongue in cheek. It's a little saying. And in her book, I really learned to appreciate what each season brings that other seasons do not. So if you go outside in the winter, you cannot wear cotton against your skin, because cotton absorbs moisture and everybody sweats when they move. And if you're moving at all, you're going to sweat, and that cotton is going to absorb your sweat, and then it's going to stay wet. It doesn't ever dry, and so you're going to be freezing. You have to be dry. So against your skin, just that one layer, you need to have something else. It could be something from Costco that costs $10 that's synthetic. It could be, your $80 wool underlayer that goes all the way down that your kids wear every day through the winter. Just something else that's against your skin. So you got to try and be warm. Like we wear the balaclava, where only your face peeks out and your neck is covered and your ears are covered and your head is covered. You got warm gloves, you got warm boots. But the winter is magical. It is magical. You go on a hike, you can see all the things that you never saw before. You can sled, you can build snowmen, you can make things out of ice. We've never skied, but you can go skiing. I mean, there's so much.
I'm not a skier, but you could.
You could do that. People do that. I've heard that people love to do that. So the point is, this is what happened, Molly. I've been wishing away my winters for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden I kind of had this change of heart. And I was like, okay, this is a different way to look at it, right? That the seasons offer different ways to develop. They offer these different opportunities. And then I started posting more about it. Like, we did this, we made this, we're going sledding. You got your video going down the hill, whatever. And I started to have people message and say, I wish I lived there. I was like, come on. Because my whole life, when you live in Michigan by February, you're like, I wish I lived somewhere else. Right? But then people started to message. I'm like, my kids have never gone to play in the snow. Where can I come and do that? I saw some guy, they had so much snow, he dug down a pit in his yard. You would go down in there. It was like snow steps. And he had this whole fire pit set up. It was like a whole city down there, and all the neighbors would come. I mean, there's something about a winter fire. This is magical. And so I have a little chart. It's like 1,000 hours outside for those who have harsh winters and 1,000 hours outside for those who have scorching summers. If you're in those two extremes where it's like, okay, well, maybe the bulk of your time outside is going to be in those other seasons. That's how it is for us. We may not be able to go outside for 4 hours, but I tell you what, if we can get outside for 45 minutes, it invigorates you. It invigorates. There is something
the ice
about
baths are real popular right now.
Well, it is. It's really healthy for you. Annabelle Abbs has a book called 52 Ways to Walk. And she has this whole chapter about building brown fat, which she's like, it just has a really bad name. Like, why is it called that? But it's like the type of fat that babies have. It's a type of fat that I guess apparently eats the bad fat. I don't know what that is, but she says the brown fat is only activated when it's cold. And so there are a lot of things going on in your body when you go outside. And then the other part is that when we live with a little bit of extremes, when we're not constantly at 70 degrees, right? Then it makes the highs better. So there's nothing better than being outside when it's freezing cold for 45 minutes. You spent 45 minutes to get your kids in their apparel.
Right.
And they go outside for 45 minutes. but you come back in and you feel so good. You come back into the crackling fire, you come back into a cup of hot chocolate, whatever that is. It doesn't feel as good if you haven't gone into the cold. And so there's a phenomenal book called The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter, where he talks about like we just have such this drive for comfort, but it's really not doing anything for our humanity. That it's these periods of time when you're like a little bit uncomfortable, you're getting bug bites, you're hot, you're sweating, you're cold, and then you get relief.
Yeah.
And it feels better than if you were always at a constant. So there's a lot to it. I think that weather helps our kids develop grit. It helps them develop. I don't think it's meant to be perfect all the time.
Right.
I think that part of the reason that it is variable and it's out of your control. Stephen Ranella writes about that book in his book, Outdoor Kids in an Inside World. Like, this is something that you don't control. You go on a camping trip and it might rain. You don't know. And so you have to be ready to adjust.
Right.
And just by being outside, it provides our kids opportunities for them to do that and for us to do that.
I'm going to take a quick break from my chat with Ginny to let you know that my book, If I Don't Laugh, I'll Cry, How Death, Debt, and Comedy Led to a Life of Faith Farming and Forgetting What I Came Into This Room For, is now available for pre-order. It comes out March 26th, 2024, which is right around the corner. Oh my goodness. It's going to be here before we know it. And I want you to go pre-order it right now. You can go to my website, stillbeingmolly.com, and there are links there. Or you can go to whatever your favorite retailer is, and you can pre-order the book. And that makes sure a couple of things. One, it makes sure that on release day, that it is on your doorstep, ready and waiting for you to read it. And also it helps the publisher it gives them an idea of how many to print in the first print. Oh, anyway, so many exciting things. I could not be more excited. In fact, as of this recording, my book went to print yesterday. So we're so close. We're right around the corner. There's so many exciting things that I cannot wait to share with you about it. I have never been more excited about something in my career, in my life. So please go pre-order the book. If I Don't Laugh, I'll Cry. Today, it would mean the world to me. And you will have the book in your hands when it comes out in March. I cannot thank you enough for your support for this. I'm so excited. All right, back to my conversation with Ginny. Well, I love that the way you end your book is you talk about, you say today's the day when you get to choose how you want your family to be. And I think that is, there's a both and there. There's a both, like that is a lot of pressure. And like you said earlier, like the onus has been put on parents.
Right.
And, I had great parents who were very involved, but you're 100% right. My parents were like, bye, we'll see ya, go outside. Like it just, but I never thought like my parents don't love me. It was like, this is what you do, is like, you go play outside and I play on the foundation slab and I make up stupid shows. And then I come inside and I go, will you watch my dance that I choreographed or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the onus has been put on parents more to make these decisions because the screens and the technology and the Netflix and all that stuff is more accessible. And so it has to be on the parents to say, that's just the reality, is it has to be on the parents to say, no, the TV is off and the iPad is off and the iPad is now in my possession. And that's just the way it is. And there's going to be fighting and there's going to be whining and there's like, that is a reality. However, like nobody said parenting was easy.
Right. And you know what? I tell you what, Kim John Payne, who wrote the book Simplicity Parenting, he, I think, ends his book, or that is a phenomenal book, Simplicity Parenting. Actually, all his books are phenomenal. But he ends that book and he says something like, rescue your kid's childhood and remarkably, inevitably, day by day, they will rescue you back. And that is really what I found, is that it's not one-sided.
Right.
And what a cool thing about nature and about being outdoors, that it really touches all of us. It's not just for the kids. And I'm like, I'm not the type that I don't like kids games. I don't like kids movies. I don't like Candyland. I don't like Uno, actually. I'm like, I think it's boring. But when we go outside, I can get something out of that. And as the kids grow, maybe you have a little bit more time. You can bring a book. If they're not toddlers anymore, you could sit and read a novel. You could have a conversation with a friend. You could sew. I don't know. That's like old fashioned. I'm like a grandma over here with my gray hairs, but it just provides this opportunity where there's something for everyone. And I think that there's not much else like that in our world where we're all getting something out of it. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and then my other, as you were talking, like the other thing I was thinking about, and man, okay, I'm kind of backpedaling here a little bit. Is that the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Is you had said, the importance of inviting friends in.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say? And I realize that when I say this, I need I'm not intentionally stepping on anyone's toes. Okay. This is just a reality, is like some of my kids' friends who I love, and I love their parents. Their parents are amazing. So if you're listening and you're like, are you about to talk about me? Their kids are like insanely overscheduled. Like they have all of the activities, and a lot of them are outside. Like they're playing soccer, or they're, doing cross country, or they're doing playing football or whatever. Like they're on their sports teams. And like, I love those things. Like my kids do activities.
Yep.
But also like there is a point that I'm like, are we overscheduling our kids with structured activities versus just letting them be kids and play outside? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm saying this like for if this is you listening, like some of my best friends, like their kids are in a million activities, and I tell them all the time, like your kids' schedule stresses me out. Like it's like, and even right now, like we've tried it. We only have 2 kids, so like I understand that we wanted 5 kids, but we got 2, and they're great. But we've kind of tried to structure it right now where it's like our daughter plays soccer in the fall and the spring, and then our son does basketball in the winter and the summer. So we alternate off a little bit so they're not both in something at the same time. We understand that that's not always going to be the case. It's not a perfect system, but that's what we've tried to do. But even now, like with my daughter, like in her soccer season, she's got a practice one night a week and then a game one night a week. And that's, even that feels like a lot at times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much, but then, I mean, I have friends whose kids, like, they've got 4 kids in 4 different sports, 4 to 5 nights a week. And so I guess it's like, are we like in a move to like the really overstructured activities and play away from unstructured? Like, are we hurting our kids? Are we helping our kids? What do you do if you all your kids' friends are just in a million activities? Like, I don't know. And I don't even know if there's a clear picture or answer to this, or I don't know.
Well, that's a cultural piece. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, which is like when there's no kids playing, it really messes with society as a whole.
Yeah.
Like this actually affects everyone.
Yeah.
And so if you're the type of parent that can put some boundaries in, if you're the type of parent that keeps the cell phone in the house and doesn't let the kid take it outside when they go play, like you really are actually affecting culture at large. It's a really big deal. But there's a difference between obviously adult-directed activity and self-structured activity. And I think this is a little bit about what my book is about until the streetlights come on, because it's about a good today. Like this is really what we want. I want to have a good today. I want to like my kids today. I want to like my life today. I want to have a full life today, but not at the expense of tomorrow, right? Like I don't want to be negligent and not prepare my kids for tomorrow. But I think because our world has so rapidly changed, and we used to have a world where people had a career for 30 years. You followed a path that led to this pretty stable situation. Yeah. But our world is not like that anymore. They say that kids coming out of high school, coming into adulthood, will have 4 different jobs in their first decade of life. This has rapidly changed. Careers are becoming obsolete quicker. There's no longer this like generational timeline for skills. Like skills come, they go, you got to move on, you got to adapt. How adaptable can you be if your whole childhood has been laid out before you? And I think that's the piece that we have to think about, which is that is a really hard situation to spend 12, 13 years of your life where everyone tells you what to do. And then all of a sudden, no one tells you what to do. And this is what's happening. Like the college professors, I talked to this woman named Jean Twangy. She says all of a sudden, these kids are coming to college. And she says they cannot even make simple decisions without texting their parents. And so this is so tricky because we're sold that we have to do all these activities in order to prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah.
In order for the college resume. There's 2 really good books that touch both. Mine does a little bit too. There's a book called Taking Back the Game by Linda Flanagan, where she talks about youth sports culture. And she's like, look, we are portraying to our kids that adulthood is crummy. That all we do is sit on the sidelines and watch their games. Who wants to grow up then? She's like, no, you have to live a little. You have to have your own friends and your own hobbies. Don't show them that adulthood is just, I sit on the sidelines and I clap when you make a goal at your soccer game. No, she actually says something like, I'm sitting here in the fetid expanse. I'm dripping with sweat, all I do is that. She's like, no, there's that part of it. And then the whole college piece is a whole scam and a racket. It's not gotten more competitive. They just are trying to bump themselves up in the rankings and with selectivity. It's a whole thing. So you really can live fully today and they have to learn how they tick. They have to learn what they like. They have to learn themselves. They have to learn emotional intelligence, which takes a long time to learn. Emotional intelligence is not learned when someone else is telling you what to do all the time. You have to rub someone the wrong way. You have to learn how to fix it, right? You have to be able to compromise and come up with something out of nothing and negotiate and assert yourself, but not too much. All of that happens when the adult is not right in the mix. And so it's a well-intentioned, I think, misguided approach to childhood, and one that everyone is doing. Yeah. So you have to be bold and brave and say, okay, this is running my family ragged. My kids are not getting long periods of time to de-stress. Kim John Payne says, 3 times a day we should have downtime. It helps your body release neurotoxins.
Yeah.
So I know kids too. It's they're up at 7 for school, and then they go to piano and then gymnastics, and they come home for dinner and they have homework, and they've never released their neurotoxins. It hasn't happened. So this is a hard time to be a parent.
It's so hard. And you know what I will say, and this is, I think what you just shared as you were talking, I was just like, this is the conviction that I feel like I needed. And I feel like that there are going to be people listening that it's okay to feel convicted. It's okay to feel like, you know what, I maybe haven't done this well. And I want to say too, in a lot of ways, it's no fault of your own, because I think it is a byproduct of what society has told us is this is what we should be doing. And actually, I have quite a few friends whose kids are high school seniors right now, which I don't feel like I'm old enough to have friends who have kids as high school seniors, but apparently I am. Because in my mind, I'm still 24, but I am not. I am not 24.
In my mind, I feel older.
I'm
am I 65? I don't know.
Although I do have granny habits. Okay. I mean, I bake my own bread and I can and things like that. But I think the reality is that we, I do look at my friends with the kids with high school seniors, and there is this pressure to get into the good school and to go to the good program and to just, it's well, they're just going to take out a bunch of loans. They're just going to be in debt. And it's do they want to go to college? Can we actually ask that question? Do they want to go to college? Because there's a gift of the culture and society that we live in right now is if you don't want to be a doctor, or you have to get some sort of certification, if that's not what you want to do, you don't have to go to college. Trade school is great. I have a friend who I went to college with who her parents were you go to college, but she wanted to be a hairdresser. That's all she wanted to do was she wanted to be a hairdresser. And her parents were nope, you're going to go to 4-year school. Well, guess what she did? She graduated from 4-year school. She has all this student debt. And then what she did? She went to beauty school or whatever. And now she's a hairdresser. And it's why did she? Yeah, college was fun. But was it actually necessary? I have another friend who her son is 10, and at 10 has a successful woodworking business. He is a phenomenal woodworker at 10 years old. He builds all kinds of things. And and I'm he's a great example of he should go to a trade school. If that's what he's interested in. But I think we've been sold a lie of you have to, and college is great. I went to college, loved it. It was fantastic. 5 stars, recommend. However, Like, let's ask our kids, like, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And not to like, and I think also there's also this, I think an attitude towards like, if kids take like a gap year. And it's like, oh, they took a gap year and they traveled to Europe and blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that that's like what you have to do, but like, if you need to take a year off to figure it out, like, I think that that's actually okay.
Well, right. And it's like, come on, like, let's take a step back. Look at your own life.
Right.
I was a math teacher. That's what I was. And here I am with a book that's actually my 5th book. Crazy. It's like my first actual real book, kind of, but like it's actually my 5th book. You know, I'm podcasting. You're podcasting.
Yeah.
This didn't exist when I graduated. So, you know, we're doing these things and I'm speaking at conferences. It's like, this is not what I was trained to do. And life just has its own path. And I think we're so scared that at 22, they're not going to know what they're doing. Well, neither did we.
Right.
Or at 22, it weaves. Like that is how life goes. And I think we can't control it. I just talked to this guy. His name's Ken Coleman. He's like,
Ken.
Ken.
Love Ken.
Kenny. Okay. So here's what he said. He was 29 and he went on this interview. He had written the interview for someone else to do. And then that person last minute couldn't come. And so he had to step in and do the interview because he's the only one who had read the book. His boss was like, it has to be you. It wasn't even what he was supposed to be doing. And that's what changed his career path.
Yeah.
That, an accident, a mistake.
Right.
Like we don't control those things.
Right.
But what we can do is we can set our kids up to have resilience, to have grit, to be risky, to know what their bodies can do, to love life.
Yes.
You know, this is like drudgery. And also sometimes, not all the time, maybe they even love all these activities, but they also have to be able to manage themselves.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's in the Bible. It says, go, when people don't listen to the Bible and that's fine, or don't love the Bible, but like this is in Proverbs. So I always feel like Proverbs is just like, you know, Proverbs is a good chapter. It's just a book of wisdom, right?
I love it.
And it says, go to the ant, you sluggard, which is great. So the Bible is interesting. You know, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
And it says, consider her ways and be wise. She has no chief or ruler or overseer, and yet she gathers her food in the summer. You know, so it's like we have to raise kids that are self-starters, that don't have to have a chief or a ruler or an overseer because our world has changed. They say Kim John Payne says, I think by 2035, this is when our kids are becoming adults. Like this is their adulthood. He says 75% of jobs will be had by entrepreneurs. 75%, 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I have a hard time. I spent 13 years of my life where someone said, do this assignment, write this paper, take this homework. This is how we're going to fill almost all your time between school and homework and academics and this AP class. And then all of a sudden, you have to figure it out on your own. Yeah. It's hard.
It is. It is. It's so hard. It is. And again, it is like, but to your point that you even said at the beginning is like the little changes that we can make now, you know, and to choosing today how we want our family to be. And by making those incremental changes, like that can make a huge impact. It can make a huge difference. And you get to make the choice, and it is hard. It is not easy. And there are going to be people that are going to look at you and be like, what are you doing? I don't understand what you're doing. And it might not make sense. Like I said, I have people all the time who ask me, I mean, this is not one of those, like, I'm getting so many DMs and questions about this. Okay. This is not one of those. This is like a legitimate, like, it's a legitimate all the time. People ask me, I don't know how you butcher your own chickens that you raised. I get that question constantly of like, but how do you butcher your own chickens? Like you kill them yourselves? And I'm like, yeah, we do. And like, no, is it fun? Like, no, I don't go like, ooh, yay, I get to kill chickens today. Although my 10-year-old daughter kind of does. Oh, sorry. Just being honest. But you know, it's hard work to every single day to care for these chickens for, you know, our meat chickens, like 8 to 10 weeks. every single day to go out and to feed them and to water them and to, they're not like plants, but to, refill their water and to move their tractor and to make sure they're on fresh grass and to, and then the process of butchering and cleaning and plucking and harvesting and then, vacuum sealing our own chickens.
And even cooking. And cooking. You're cooking it on your own. Sure.
It takes a long time. And people genuinely no, is it convenient? Absolutely not. Like it is, could I go to the grocery store and buy chicken myself? Yes, absolutely I could. However, we wanted to move to a way of life that was a little bit different and to be a little bit more self-sustaining. And I understand that it's not for everybody. And I'm not saying that it's for everybody, but it's for our family. And at the end of the day, our kids, they know now how much effort goes into a chicken nugget. It's a lot of work. And also not that long ago, we are not that far removed from our grandparents' generation, great grandparents' generation, where that's just what you did. Because if you didn't, you didn't eat. Grocery stores have not been around that long. Yes, there were markets and things like that. That was common, but that's where you got your fresh fruits and vegetables from farmers that grew what you didn't grow yourself. But for the most part, majority of families raised their own food. And they I have so many friends who are like, oh yeah, well I couldn't do it. But my grandma, she told me stories about going out and wringing a chicken's neck. And I just am like, right, we're not that far. That's not what we do. But it's a move from away,
to be clear,
bucking societal trends. And I'm not a crazy person. I'm just trying to raise my family and to do things a little bit differently. And so I say all of that to say that, that this is hard and it is not going to be easy. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. And so it's okay to feel convicted, and it's okay to when this podcast is over, sit with it for a minute and sit with that conviction and sit with the statement that you said of today is the day that you get to choose how you want your family to be. And you don't have to overhaul. You just need to make slight adjustments. And so, gosh, I love this so much. I just want to do an entire podcast series with you on this. It's so good. But here's a great promo. So you have a podcast. Real quick, before I ask my last question, how can people listen to your podcast? Tell us about it so that people can go and subscribe and all that stuff.
You're so sweet. I loved this. I like you.
I like you too.
I like you.
You're so fun.
I can see why you're so successful.
Oh God!
This is amazing.
No.
And also, people need to pre-order your book, and I want to do a plug for your book because at this point it's available for pre-order.
It is.
And it's If I Don't Laugh, I'll Cry. Which there we go. That's you got to insert some humor into motherhood. I mean, some of this stuff is funny.
Yeah.
Or it's funny in retrospect at least.
Oh, gosh, and so many funny stories.
You get one life, you get one chance. So pre-order your book.
Thanks.
And pre-orders really help authors in a lot of ways. So it's if you are getting something out of this podcast that Molly is doing, you should pre-order the book, and then it will enhance your life, and it helps the author because then they know how many to order. I had a book came out that sold out.
Oh, wow.
On Amazon. It was in Europe, but in 11 days it sold out. Then you couldn't get it for months because they have to do a reprint. So it's if you want the book, get the book. There's usually little bonuses and all sorts of stuff. So plug for you and get Molly's book. I'm not creative. So everything of mine is just 1,000 hours outside. So that's what the website is. And we have an app. It's the same name. The podcast has the same name. So it's just a 1,000 hours outside podcast. I have learned that I love it. I love to be able to sit with someone and get kind of their best hour. Because everyone has something that they're about and something that they're passionate about. And you get that. It's you go right to it. All the important things that make them tick and the things that they have learned and studied, sometimes for decades. I people on the podcast are 80 years old.
Yeah.
It's they've been studying something for 55 years. What have they learned in 55 years?
I love talking with seasoned people. Love it. Yes. Can't get enough.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so it really is it's been a gift for me. I think it's something that I was really nervous about jumping into. Someone asked if I would help them launch their book on my podcast. I was like, I don't know. But since then, I'm like, it has been such a gift. And it's like one of those things I think maybe similar to getting outside where like it's a gift for everyone. Like it's a gift for that person because it helps them out, and it's a gift for yourself. And, hopefully it's a gift to the people that are listening too, that it gives them food for thought. And I like to have different conversation topics that I can talk to people about, or just different things to think about. I think when you're a mom and you're with little kids all day, like it like gives you a little spark in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, this is something I can think about. And so, anyway, that's like so off topic.
No,
I don't know. I'm just saying how much I like it.
No, I love it so much.
I'm saying how much I like you.
I like how much I like you, Ginny. Yeah, if we lived near each other, I think we would hang out all the time, and our kids could play. Okay, well, as we are finishing up here, is there any just last like words of encouragement that you have for the person who maybe has felt convicted in this episode? Because part of that is me. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying, I'm not kidding. I'm not blowing smoke right now when I say that this is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes I've ever done. Because I think it's just it was such a needed conversation, and it had the perfect mix of like, we laughed, I got a little choked up. It just, it's a conversation I'm gonna be thinking about a lot. And I know that is going to be the case for others as well. And so I would just love for you to just leave your last like little bit of word of encouragement or wisdom for the person who maybe is in that position and is feeling, like a little bit convicted and a little bit like I've screwed this up, or I haven't done this well. And I don't want to overhaul everything, but I do want to make a change.
Mm-hmm. I feel convicted too, like we're reading all sorts of things. And I actually kind of like the feeling. Like I got convicted reading Jill Winger's book, and she has Old Fashioned on Purpose. And she was talking about like hands-on things and like, like when we use our hands, it helps with depression. And so I'm like, I got a little stitch kit that I keep in my purse now. And like, I've been convicted by Joel Salatin's books.
Oh yeah. Love his stuff.
I mean, yes. I mean, so much so like, okay, like should we really be using these throwaway plates? And, can we make some small decisions that really, I don't know, maybe don't make a huge difference, but they make a little bit of a difference. Yeah. So here's what my midwife says. She says, and she's become a good friend of mine. She says, someday our kids are going to come back to us and they're going to ask why. Why didn't you put more boundaries? Why didn't you limit my screen time? Because I only had one childhood.
Oof.
And I think about that a lot because there are long-term effects to the choices that we make. And this is their life. This is their childhood. And it's important to understand, at least to a small degree, what self-directed childhood play does for kids. And it does an immense amount. The things that I have learned over the years, and my list continues to grow, is so unbelievably substantial about how it structures their brain, and how when kids jump and land, it builds their skeletal system. Like Katie Bowman, who is from Nutritious Movement, she says, osteoporosis is a childhood disease that shows up in adulthood because kids are meant to jump and land and have impact and build their bone structure. And they do all of those things without our direction.
Yeah.
They came into the world miraculously designed to self-educate, really, in so many ways.
Right.
So many of the things that kids do, they learn for mastery. It comes from within.
Right.
And we shut that off. There's a wonderful study by NASA where they measured kindergartners, and it was something like 98% of them fell into the genius category. They fell into the category that NASA was like just desperately looking for the genius inventors and so creative.
Wow.
And then in time, they lose it.
Wow.
They lose it. Because we're well-intentioned, but we're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so we should know. We should know that play is valuable.
Yeah.
That what the child finds worthy is a worthy thing. And that by doing something like 1,000 hours outside, or paying attention to just that amount of real life hands-on time that you're getting,
right,
you should celebrate yourself.
Yeah.
Like you should give yourself a pat on the back, because that is hard work and you have done it, and it's worthy to be celebrated in a world where we are entrenched in technology.
Yeah. Oh man, Ginny, this is so good. Everybody go get her book, Until the Streetlights Come On, How a Return to Play Brightens Our Present and Prepares Kids for an Uncertain Future. You are amazing. Thank you for the work that you do. You are definitely going to come back on this podcast because I just adore you. And
you're going to be on mine.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. So fun. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Molly.
Did I not tell you that Ginny is amazing? My gosh. Oh, I love her so much. She's hilarious. She's funny. She's witty. She's smart. She really cuts you to the core. Oh man, what a great episode. Please let us know what you liked on social media. You can tag me at Still Being Molly or at Can I Laugh Pod on Instagram and the Facebook. And you can find Ginny at 1000 Hours Outside. You can go get her new book, Until the Streetlights Come On. And that is available now. Please go support her work. Let us know what you loved about this episode. We would love to hear from you. Want to let you guys know this is the last episode of 2023. I decided that I'm going to take off of Christmas week, so we will not have a new episode next week, but there are tons of episodes in the archives that you can catch up on if you're behind on your episodes. So if you're on that road trip or wherever to go visit family or friends, you can catch up on old episodes. And we will see you back after the first of the year with brand new episodes coming up. I'm so grateful for your listening and for your support and just for how you champion this show week in and week out. Thank you to the team at Third Wheel Media for producing the show. And for you, I hope something this week makes you laugh till you cry. We'll see you next year. Bye.